Hi everyone, I'm Dale Smith, aka Journo Dale, and we're here to talk about Canadian politics. All right, we're here with Royal Commentator Extraordinaire Patricia Treble, and we've just had our royal visit, and let's dig into it. So it was just shy of 24 hours. The Royals kept on UK time the whole time, so things were kept early in the day so that they didn't need to adjust their body clocks. And we got our walkabouts, we got our speech. Patricia was there for all of this.
Yep.
Patricia, let's where do you want to start?
Um, the mosquitoes eating everyone alive for the tree planting.
Yeah,
The joys of a royal tour. You know what? I look. I always say that royal tours these days, royal visits, are made in the first day. They're
yeah,
made or broken in the first day. William and Kate's to 2022 going to the Caribbean. Basically, it was lost in the first day. I mean, the slavery reparation claims that they didn't have an answer to. When the king came with Camilla for the first time as husband and wife in 2009, they went for the infamous Newfoundland outports starting in November. Now, it was the 400th anniversary of the founding of Cubits, which is, one of the earliest English settlements.
yeah,
But outports in the middle of November in terrible weather, it set a tone saying, oh, nobody's showing up for them. I mean, later events in Toronto, like I went to, were packed, didn't matter. I mean,
yeah,
the narrative was set. So they had to make sure for this trip that the narrative was set the minute they got off the plane. I mean, 24 hours, basically you've got hours, maybe minutes. And they put a lot of thought into that. And so if you just analyze even the arrival. So Royal Canadian Air Force jet, the way they always do.
yeah,
The red carpet goes out the way it always does. The red duct tape, just so you know, they red duct tape. They do think about these things. But you had an honor guard from the Royal Canadian Dragoons with their metal helmets, their flashing lances,
the
and
horsehair on the helmets.
oh, it was spectacular, right?
Yeah,
And it was the image. And then what they also did, which is really smart, so that you come off right down the stairs, you go right down the red carpet lined with the dragoons, and then you have the you have to meet and greet everyone, the dignitaries. But they didn't have them lining up in that line because they'd be in the shot. No, they had them positioned on an angle going descending away from that one shot. So it was perfect. Everyone got to get the meet and greets, the pictures that
hmm,
they wanted, but they weren't blocking all the other shots. And I'm going to say that was kind of at the point where I kind of went, yeah, they have put a thought into every image. Like basically, this is an image
yeah,
visit. It was all designed about that. There were no worthwhile Canadian ventures, no worthwhile Canadian engagements. This was all done for the visual cue that the King of Canada is coming home. And as
yeah,
as the Governor General said, welcome home. And everything from that first moment, I kind of went, oh yeah, yeah, they figured it out because they had 6 weeks. I mean,
yeah,
it was, this is, and for people who don't know, this is unbelievably crazy fast to do a royal visit like this, even a
yeah.
24-hour one. Yeah.
So we had also at the arrival, we had a bunch of local First Nations and
Mm-hmm.
stuff there as well. This is something that I don't think enough people appreciate is the role that the Crown plays with the treaties. Because there's this narrative that goes around about how the Crown, the royal family is, the agent of colonialism, and that's not necessarily true. And so I did notice things like there was some gift exchange or gift giving and so on from the local Anishinaabe group. There was the drum circle when they got there and so on. So I mean they did also put thought into including that indigenous element in this King of Canada role.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. And right off the start, so after the Governor General and her husband, after the Prime Minister and his wife, you had the leaders of the three national Indigenous groups.
Yeah.
Bang, bang, bang. They're always there. I mean, this has now been it's de rigueur now for royal visits. But as you said, yes, they had a drum circle there. They had people from the local Indigenous nations who were there, and it continued on. You had audiences at Rideau Hall with the Indigenous groups, with Indigenous leaders.
Yeah.
The King has always made a big thing of this. The King's Trust in Canada has a lot of Indigenous initiatives, especially like promoting Indigenous languages in children's books. Is one of the, I think we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
It sounds so simple, like, oh, right, children's books in Indigenous language, but it's incredibly important because if you're going to grow up and you want to pass on the language, you've got to start at the very beginning with,
Yeah.
picture books. And so he's always been involved in that. And I noticed also, did you notice in the Senate as well? There was a series of formalities.
Yeah.
And this is simply just part of Canada now. I mean, it's simply just now part of the protocol. And I like the way it's almost not even it's noticed, it's kind of mentioned, but it's just so obvious that it's expected.
Yeah, I mean, I also like the fact that the land acknowledgement aspect of the speech was in the introduction part that he wrote,
Yes.
or that he and his office wrote, and
Yep.
not the government's portion of it as well. And I thought that
Yep.
was also a significant issue, or a significant thing to notice. Even if, certain National Post columnists, have to choke on it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to say so. I at that point when by the minute they went in for the throne speech, I was in the press area outside the open media area, and we were immediately taken off to the cenotaph for the next event.
Yeah.
And so I had to be asked the cell reception. There were so many people, big crowds, that the cell reception was terrible. So we were actually just reading the speech. I wasn't actually watching it, and it was fascinating going back to actually watch it. That you could tell which parts that he clearly wrote. I mean, especially top and the tail, beginning and the end.
Yeah.
But it seemed like scattered through, as my mother had said there was a lot of references to his mother, who is, of course, beloved by everyone, Queen Elizabeth II. But there were just these scatterings throughout the entire speech, which I thought was something. I wasn't expecting that. But hilarious having him talk about GST.
I know. Like every one of us is like it's such a discordant thing to have him talk about how much the tax cut is supposed to save families. I'm like, I could have done without those portions of the speech. But before we delve too far into the speech, I did want to just I don't know if you had spent any time at Lansdowne or if you just went directly from airport to Rideau Hall.
Didn't get to Lansdowne. So basically what happens on these trips is you have to make a choice. You can't do everything. The pool media, the media that is very, very close to him, it's a very small group, and everything that they do, pool reporter, pool camera, pool video, is fed. Everyone can use it. Everyone has access to it. They were everywhere, but we had to make a choice, and I chose to go to Rideau Hall.
Okay.
So,
yeah. All right.
Otherwise, you didn't get the landing, but huge crowds at Lansdowne.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. Was huge crowds, like really vocal support, and the stuff that they had done with him inside the one building, like groups that he would have some sort of affinity with, or so on. Also, just part of the really well planned aspects of it. But we did have an extended walkabout, and so far as I know, that they were actually behind getting to Rideau Hall as a result of that. So again, for someone who was watching this from afar, it was kind of just good to see, as you're talking about the crowds that make the first few hours of a visit, that there had been this really warm and big reception. And I thought that was that really helped set the tone for everyone.
exactly. And the minute I heard that there was going to be a puck drop, I thought, or a ball. At first I thought it was a ball hockey because it's street
Yeah,
hockey. I mean, how
it's
is
ball hockey,
what?
but he still did a puck
He
drop.
still did a puck drop. And I said, you know what? That's going to be the image that's going to go around the world. And sure enough, that was the one. So it was either the landing with all the, the Royal Canadian Dragoons, or it was the puck drop. It was the puck drop. It
Yeah,
was like, yeah, they kind of went tick, tick, tick. I liked the fact that there was a farmer's market. Those
yeah,
two love a farmer's market because they know so much. I mean, he grows, they grow a lot of crops themselves, and they're very, very knowledgeable. And so they brought in all the local farmers, and who apparently
yeah,
were just absolutely thrilled about. I mean, really wanted to come back. Obviously on a Monday. They're normally there, I believe, on Saturday or Sunday.
yeah, something like that.
Um,
Yeah.
but it doesn't matter because I mean, if you can get a picture of the king eating something at your stall, you're going to do it.
Which
Um,
they didn't do,
no,
but apparently Camilla did take a couple of maple candies from the one table.
yeah, and
So
so apparently there's maple syrup was bought as well. So
yeah,
as one always does. So no, I thought the Lansdowne thing was really successful, and as you said, a lot of his own interests. So meeting with Ukrainian community in Canada, of course, that is a
yeah.
big cause. The war in Ukraine is a huge cause for him. He'd done that when he was back.
The previous visit.
2022. Yeah,
Yeah.
he'd done that in the previous visit. He does that very often in London, so it was like made perfect sense. You know, and of course, do we talk about brooches here or later?
Let's talk a little later.
Okay.
So Lansdowne to Rideau Hall,
Hmm.
tree planting,
Yeah.
meetings with Indigenous leaders, as well
Yeah.
as the Governor General, the Prime Minister, and they had a family photo with almost all of the Lieutenant Governors,
Yep.
territorial commissioners. I think there was one absent.
Newfoundland and Labrador. So she had a
Right.
prior engagement because, again, this was such a last minute thing. She couldn't get out of it. But they
Yeah,
had everyone else there. And they were actually all at the tree planting as well,
yeah.
which I thought was quite nice. So, yeah, just emphasizing the Canadianness of everything, the Canadianness of the crown. And of course, the Queen being sworn into the Privy Council. So now he can talk openly about Canadian affairs with his wife. Just the way Prince Philip had been sworn in when he and Queen Elizabeth came their first trip in '57.
Yeah.
So you're following in the precedent. They're sworn into the Canadian Council, and sorry, the Canadian Privy Council.
Yeah.
And what else was
Which a
there?
lot of media outlets didn't seem to really.
No.
Well, and the Rito Hall description was really weird about it too.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, we also got that weird tweet from Rito Hall about two nations, and
Which they very quickly deleted, I'm
I
going
mean
to
they
say.
deleted it and
Yeah.
so on. But I mean, it
Yeah.
was still like
With the
that
British
should
flag
not
and the
have
Canadian
happened.
flag, and you're just kind of going like, no, there's only one nation, it's Canada.
Yeah.
And what was noticeable was that I would say the vast majority of the media, every now and again there was like oddities, but the vast majority of the media understood he's coming as King of Canada, that he's in his role as King of Canada. So everything is the Canadian government advising
Yeah,
him.
we got a
Yeah,
lot of that, but then CP Canadian Press
uh,
still wrote in their copy "sitting British monarch," and
yeah. Puck
I
News
think
just
heads
did
should
a
roll over that,
podcast.
but that's
Yeah,
my yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. So from there, now we've got the speech the next day. We've
Yep.
sort of touched on some of this. Um,
Again, picture perfect. So you've got
yeah,
it was a perfect day. So I'm going to be honest, I was worried about the weather because it had been atrocious for a week ahead.
yeah.
And it cleared up kind of that day. There was a
The
few
little
sprinkle
rain at Rita
clouds,
Hall, but that was about it.
a little bit, the tiniest little bit of sprinkle, and then it was perfect. And Tuesday was absolutely perfect. Wasn't that hot, wasn't, but it was really sunny. I mean, cameramen were grousing. They could have had a little more cloud. But
Yeah,
when you saw coming down Wellington,
which was an
the state
interesting route
landau,
too. I that for them to
yes,
do that particular because it's the opposite end of Rita Hall.
Exactly.
You
So
would
they,
think like they would come up Sussex from Rita
yeah,
Hall, but they
yeah.
didn't. They did Wellington instead, which I thought was a really interesting choice.
And that is simply because normally you get into the state landau at the National Art Gallery, but simply because the Senate is now in the temporary Senate, and just a little locale for those who know Ottawa, you go up Sussex, you have to hang a sharp right onto Wellington, and then you stop. And
Yeah,
so it's just that is too hard of a corner, and you're going uphill. So what they did is they simply just had it all the way down Wellington. So it's a nice straight venue. So they got up,
yeah,
started at the Bank Canada. So Mark Carney, he wasn't there. It was of
yeah,
course the King, Queen, Governor General, and her husband in the state landau. 14. So the musical ride from the RCMP, 14 in
yeah,
the front, 14 in the back. So you've got that beautiful visual,
yeah.
and again, packed, absolutely packed streets. I mean, look, I look behind me at the shuttle area, which is right across from the Senate, and they were largely blocked by the media riser that we,
Hmm.
where we were. They were at least 8 or 10 deep by the time I stopped paying attention to how deep they were. It was that sort of crowd. So, and yet, do we talk about the dead flowers and the planters on Wellington Street?
Which were
Because
gone like 2 days later, but they didn't get them
I,
out ahead of
yeah,
time.
you know what they said? They said, well, they died a little early because of the weather conditions, but we're going to keep to our normal replacement cycle. So they'll be replaced in the next 2 weeks. And I'm like, the symbolism
Yeah,
of dead flowers. Now, in the end, of course, the crowds masked them. You didn't see them, but I'm thinking, no flags flying on that route either. That I thought was quite
interesting.
noticeable. There were
Hmm.
no Canadian, I mean, some flying from, buildings, of course, the Langevin building and stuff like that, but on the route itself, none. And everyone, in Canadian Heritage, National Capital Commission, and the City of Ottawa, none of them would comment about it. They all sent because I asked about it, they sent the email around in a circle
Hmm.
and nobody would respond. It
Interesting.
seems like
Yeah,
a pretty big thing to not do, you know?
yeah. And also, yeah, interesting. They put the King Standard on center block which is empty,
Mhm.
and not on the Senate building itself, which
No,
is
so
also
it
interesting.
was.
Oh,
It,
was
it
it?
you
Okay.
had you had to know. So it was actually they had a small flagpole right at the curb. So right beside where he's taking the oath, and they put up his Canadian the sovereign's flag for Canada. They put it up right there.
Okay.
So it was in both places at once. One was a smaller one. One was a much bigger one flying on Parliament Hill. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Other things just to notice was during the extended time when Black Rod has to
Mhm.
take the shuttle bus over to West Block
Yeah.
where the House of Commons is because it's not in the same building anymore. It just the time that he got to spend going into the Senate chamber
Yeah.
talking to absolutely everybody. There were former prime ministers there. There were former governors general. There were most of the premiers I saw, or I saw
Mhm.
a number of premiers there. Not most, but a lot. There were a lot of premiers there. The lieutenant governors were there.
Yep.
Supreme Court justices,
Yep.
those kind of things. And he went and he and Camilla went and worked the room. And
Exactly.
um,
And
and
did
that
you
was again,
notice
I think it
that?
was also just really kind of a good way of him getting really acquainted with this is official
Yeah,
Ottawa in a respect as well.
exactly. And did you notice that he knew a lot of the people? Like
Yeah.
he clearly knew them. He wasn't just being introduced to them for the first time.
No.
No, he knew them. I mean, a lot of the lieutenant governors will go over to London and they have audiences at Buckingham Palace. I mean, I regularly, I'll see that coming up and the pictures are released.
Yeah.
But there's no question. I mean, I was looking at Supreme Court justices. There was a hug for Margaret Trudeau.
Yes,
So Margaret
I did
Trudeau,
see that as well. But I mean,
yeah.
they've
So
known each other
Margaret
for a very long time.
They've known each other exactly since the 1970s. So,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure, who gave who a hug, but he didn't mind.
Yeah.
He's a much more relaxed. He is not his mother, much more formal generation she was.
Yeah.
And but I just love that, and how you're explaining this. I can hear the foreign media being told, look, because they're in both the House of Commons and the Senate are in two separate spots temporarily,
Yeah.
it simply makes the logistics. So this is what we've done to kind of, bridge the gap. We still have to do, Blackrod still has to go pound on that
Yeah.
door. Can't mess with that. But they did try to speed it up. I mean, I think they had a lot of the MPs already pre-positioned
Yeah. Yeah.
nearby. So they kind of,
So they had
sped
to
it
have a
all up.
number in the House of Commons just for the camera shots,
Yeah,
and to actually do the trek over.
yeah.
But a lot of MPs just went directly to the Senate that morning, and not go to the House of Commons.
Yeah. And then what they did is, as the king queen left, the MPs that hadn't made it over in time were there kind of, so they could, they could see everything as,
Yeah.
as the exits happened. And so which I thought was a nice touch as well. And of course, let's face it, this is the old train station
Yeah.
in Ottawa. It's a Beaux-Arts building. It's a spectacular building. I mean, we've been in it.
Yeah.
I
They
hate the
did such
carpet.
a good job restoring it too.
They did a spectacular
If
job, and they
only
did
they had done a better job of the carpet in the Senate chamber.
the carpet in the set is awful. If you look at it, guys, it is I'm going to say, I think it's the wrong shade of red.
The wrong shade of
Um,
red. It's got multicolored maple leaves, and it's
yep.
also got this large English rose pattern as well in there. And
It
it's
looks
garish, and it looks like a
the
rec room
1980s,
basement.
the 1980s called and they want their carpet back. I
Yeah.
mean, it looks like something out of the 1980s. I mean, really, it
Yeah.
does not work. But you know what? Hey, and I love the fact, of course, they take out the desks, they put in benches, so everyone is very tight.
Yeah.
And I just love that feeling. There was an intimacy because, of course, the old Senate, which is being restored right now. When is it? 2031 or something like that is going to be
I
ready.
don't know what the
Yeah,
updated number
it's
is.
a long ways away. Still, I mean, there's a lot to do. But it is a imposing place.
Yeah.
So I've got a hope. So maybe 2031. So that's only 6 years from now.
Yeah, 6, maybe 7 years. I
So
mean,
I
we're
got it. I've
still,
I've got to think if they're going to come back again to open Parliament again, it'll be for that one
yeah,
or to do the
with
session or
with
whatever.
the proper thrones and with,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, with all the gilts, with those chandeliers, those spectacular chandeliers,
yeah,
which are the biggest things you've ever seen. There's for people who are watching, go onto the Senate of Canada website and look at the videos for the renovation, because they've got it showing what they needed to do to take those chandeliers out of there, and it is the most amazing engineering feat just to get them down and out for repair.
yeah.
Yeah.
I do remember once upon a time we had an earthquake in Ottawa. In
Oh,
June, it was in like late June. The House of Commons
yeah.
had already risen. The Senate was still sitting. And they were talking, the senators were on the lawn because I had gone up that day to go to the Senate when the earthquake happened. And they were talking about how the chandeliers in this chamber were swinging so much that they were like,
Let's get out.
get out just in case. So that was,
Well, Well, and speaking of get out, get out, get out, there was a funny part where the media always has to be there way early, right?
yeah,
You get locked into place. You have the very, very, very good dogs of the RCMP sniff all your bags and stuff like that. Anyways, and so we're on this metal riser, and it's about six levels high.
yeah,
It's not that big, and it's packed. And all of a sudden, this I think it was a sergeant came by in a very commanding man. And he said, "Everyone has to move from the bottom two stairs, bottom two levels." And everyone's looking, going like, "No, like we've got our spots." And he's like, "No, you have to move." And he explains that it's because when the troops of the Royal Canadian Regiment march by, they're going to march in front and stand directly in front of us for the king to inspect the troops
yeah,
before he goes into the Senate. And as they march, of course, their guns, their weapons have bayonets on them, and they are real, very sharp bayonets. And he says,
yeah,
and if anything happens, if somebody faints or trips or something like that, swinging bayonets, you have to move. You could be injured. And so at that point, everyone then had to then move up and cram even tighter in. Oish, it was
yeah,
just a bit of a mess. But I loved it. Swinging bayonets, you've got to move. Swinging
yeah.
bayonets.
All right, so we had the speech, we had the wreath laying at the cenotaph,
Yep.
and then the royals were gone.
Yep.
So with all of this, now let's talk. He didn't wear a uniform for the
No.
speech, which I have mixed feelings about, but I
I,
also
yep.
made the point in the column I wrote on it that this would be a good opportunity for us to, as part of more Canadianizing the Canadian monarchy, is to bring back the civil uniform, and do
Update the
something
civil
with that,
uniform.
and
Yep.
make some embroidery that's got some indigenous fat patterns in it.
Yep.
Like really Canadianize the shit out of it,
Yep.
and so that we've got something that's
Yes.
a little
Agreed.
more, commanding a little more. That I think we would do well to try and bring some level of, I guess, just like a heightened sensibility to it.
Yep. Yep. And I fully agree with that. I think all the governor generals, I mean, some of the lieutenant governors have brought back the civil uniform. It's
Yeah, some of them
rare.
have. They've got a few
Nova
on
Scotia, I
hand. Nova
think.
Scotia, New Brunswick.
BC, I think has done it.
BC designed a new one, but it's only
Yeah.
been used by a couple of
Hmm.
them. And
So,
the one why BC is such a really good example is when Iola Campanola, I think her name was,
mhm.
was the lieutenant governor.
Iona Campanola.
Iona, yeah, yeah. That they had not only designed this new uniform, but because she had these connections with some of the indigenous nations out there, they had done these patterns that related to what name they gave her, that they had
Yeah.
embroidered onto her uniform, and it looks
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
And it's something that I think we should be, doing more with.
Absolutely, absolutely. And look, I mean, the governor general is Inuit, so she
Yeah,
should be wearing something. I would plump for having her wear a formal version of Inuit garb.
yeah,
Absolutely. So I mean, I was a bit disappointed that he wasn't wearing a military uniform. He does have a Canadian Armed Forces uniform. We know
yeah,
it. He's worn it previously. It kind of surprised me a little bit. I had heard that she was going to be wearing a hat, and that made sense. I was disappointed at first because I was thinking I'd love to see her in a coronation gown the way they normally do, tiara, but it made sense because after that they were then walking up to the cenotaph, and that would just be
yeah,
too weird of an image of her in a coronation gown with the tiara
yeah.
at the cenotaph. So I understood that why they did that. He had, of course, all his medals, including his Canadian Forces decoration for long service, with the three clasps he has, the extra
Yeah.
clasps he has, the Order of Canada, of course,
Yeah.
around his neck. And of course, she was wearing the regimental brooch of the Queen's Own
Well,
Rifles of Canada, and
yeah.
she's
Yeah. And
she's
that
been
was
there.
that was going to be my next thing was we got
Yep,
two brooches. We got the maple leaf on the first day, and we got the Royal Canadian
yep.
Rifles on the second, which people on TV read the typo in the
Riffles,
handout as riffles.
riffles. Yep,
Yes.
yep. The Queen's, what was it? The Queen's Canadian Riffles or something like that. And people were looking at me because they know I like brooches, and I'm looking at the text. I'm like, and then all of a sudden, like somebody showed me a high resolution image, and I went, "Oh, Queen's Own Rifles of Canada,"
Yeah.
and I know it simply because they're based in Toronto, and they're actually at my church. Their memorial is at my church,
Okay.
and so they are the longest serving infantry regiment in Canada. Incredibly distinguished history. She's been the colonel in chief since 2011, and took over from Princess Alexandra, the late Queen's cousin, who was their colonel in chief for 50 years.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, so I'm going to tell you a story because, I said, people are like, well, why would she wear that regimental brooch? She is incredibly close to her regiment. She's from a military background. Her father
Yeah.
served with distinction in the Second World War. And of course, her husband was in the military. First husband
First
and
husband.
second and second and
And
second. So
second.
she's got both. But when they were here in 2017 for the 150th anniversary, of Canada. And it was again one of those lightning fast trips. They were not going to Toronto, but the closest they were coming was CFB Trenton. They were going into central Canada for the day.
Yeah.
And so she actually asked for her regiment and their families, could whoever could come, could they come to CFB Trenton, and she'd have a reception. She wanted to see them, and I simply happened to be the pool reporter that day on that event. And as she said, well, I couldn't come to Canada and not see you. And she did this lovely event talking to everyone, and she knew them to the point that she was talking to this one officer, and she's addressed him by
Yeah.
his rank, and then all of a sudden looks at his uniform and goes, wait a second, you've had a promotion since we've last talked, and she instantly realized that.
Yeah.
And that was the sort of like, that is the closeness of that connection. So when I saw that brooch, I thought, okay, I will forgive her. There are other brooches I may have wanted her to wear, but I will forgive her because that is such a special brooch, with a deep connection. And of course, Maple Leaf on the first day, and again, worn, it was given by King George VI to his wife, Queen Elizabeth, later the Queen Mother, for their first tour as monarchs of Canada in 1939. It's been
Yeah.
worn by 4 generations of royal women. Perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect.
All right.
I
Well,
think she heard that I was not happy that she didn't wear one to Canada House.
yeah.
I'm thinking that message got through.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm just about
I'm taking
out
it.
of time here. So any last thoughts before we have to go?
I think it kind of ticks off. So I'm thinking about what the king has done in his reign.
Yeah.
Coronation, he's gone to Australia, he's gone to Canada, he's been ticking off kind of what he's been doing. Obviously, cancer has played a part. Remember, he's having weekly cancer treatments, and he should horn this into an incredibly busy time in the calendar.
Yeah.
I mean, this says a lot about how much he thought, the value that he placed on this trip, and that he wanted this trip. But what it also does is it sets up, I think, for what we believe to be a much longer tour next year.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
again, this is going to be fascinating because we believe it's going to happen, of course, before he goes to the States. It is the 250th anniversary, of course, of their independence from his great, 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 great grandfather. I think I've got it right. I think there's 5 there.
I
George III. And this again is going to reset the clock on how these visits are perceived, because the Canadian visit, I think I have to imagine, is going to have to be longer and bigger and more
Yeah.
dramatic than anything in the States. It just
Yeah.
has to be, given what we're in right now.
Yeah.
The other thing was how much world attention this got. This was on the
Yeah.
front page of everything.
Yeah.
It was a big deal in the way that, let me put it this way, throne speeches in Canada, never too much of a
No.
big deal.
No.
He gave the throne speech. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to do this.
Okay.
And we are going to talk again before too long. So no worries there. And thanks again.
There's always something to talk about.
Always.
Bye.
Cheers. And that's everything for this week. Join us again next week for some more Canadian politics. I'm Dale Smith. That's at Journo_Dale on Twitter and JournoDale no_ on Bluesky. And don't forget to like the video, share, subscribe, and support us on Patreon. Thanks, everyone.